Alright, we're going to talk about towing a 29-foot travel trailer with a Ford F350. So the trailer is a Cougar 29 BHS, 8,800 pound max weight, 4,400 pound axles. I believe its dry weight's around 7,000. It's listed at about an 800 pound tongue weight. Hitch I'm using is the Anderson no sway weight distribution hitch. Has the little springs on the back end of it that help keep the bounce and oscillation down. Does a pretty good job. This trailer does wiggle a little bit more than my last trailer. I don't know if it's the hitch or the setup of the trailer itself, or just the weight and balance of it. Never felt out of control. Never had to apply the trailer brakes to stop sway. Just wiggles a little bit. So we're just going to kind of talk through kind of the process and setup I have for towing, my thoughts on it. Hopefully this will help somebody out. All right, so let's talk about weights for a minute, and why I'm pulling a half-ton, quote-unquote, trailer with a 1-ton truck. This is a 350. It has just under 3,400 pounds of payload. So I had a 3/4 ton truck that I was towing with previously, but it was a diesel, and with 5 people, gear, and the camper, we were over payload. It was at a 10,000 pound GV, gross vehicle weight rating. This one has 11,500, so a lot more room with it. So this truck, empty, when I weighed it with just myself and like a week's worth of luggage, was 8,420. This whole setup here with a full tank of water, loaded down for a 2-week trip for a family of 5, weighed 17,120 pounds. That's 4640 on the front axle, 5240 on the rear, and 7240 on the trailer axles. So that means that the truck had an additional 1,460 pounds on it. And again, that was with me and gear in it, not my family. So 3 kids and a wife are not included in these numbers. So when you look at the amount of gear I have in it, it's probably about 300 pounds of extra stuff. I've got tools, I've got a fire pit, I've got blocks for the camper, stabilizers, water hose, outdoor mats, all that stuff in the bed of the truck. I estimate that about 300 pounds. So if you look at that, it's around 1,100 pounds of hitch weight that this camper is putting on the truck. So even though it says half-ton, most half-ton trucks have between 1,000 and 1,500 pounds of payload. So if you're carrying a full tank of water, you're close to your payload limit. You have 2 people in it, you're over payload. So keep that in mind when you're making decisions on what your tow vehicle is versus what you're towing. This thing has listed as an under 800 pound hitch weight. Remember, the hitch weights the manufacturer's list don't include propane, don't include the battery, don't include any stuff inside the camper. So no water, no gear, no clothing, no groceries, nothing. So that's the weights of it. Those are all from CAT scales. If you do tow, especially if you're going for any long distance, and you think you're close, I definitely recommend that you take the time to weigh it and see where you're at to keep yourself safe and keep yourself legal. All right, so let's talk about the driving setup. So it's a 2018. It comes with Apple CarPlay. It is wired Apple CarPlay. However, I did buy an adapter. It's about $100 off Amazon. It plugs into the port and now gives me wireless CarPlay. So I don't have to plug in my phone to get that. I can just walk in the truck, turn it on, and it seamlessly connects. Now, every now and then it does glitch, and it does take a second, but most of the time you turn it on and by the time you're ready to go, your phone is already connected. My towing setup, for the most part, I've been using Torque. I've used Torque for a couple years now. It's not connecting to the OBD because I got a new adapter, because I'm looking at trying to use ForeScan. now that I have a Ford. Let's see if it pulls. It's not pulling any information right now. But I'm still learning this. I had to get a new adapter. I got the OB-Link MX Plus. I had a V-Peak one before, and it just didn't do well with ForeScan. That's right, I need to connect it. For my dash, I typically leave it on just the trip, because the Ford doesn't have a good page for like your temperatures and things like that, like it did my Ram, where it had coolant, transmission, things like that. One thing I don't particularly like about Apple CarPlay is that I lose my external temperature display. It's not a huge thing, I just like to know that. So I did add that to Torque. So again, it's not reading anything right now, but I do have ambient air temperature right here on it. One additional thing about towing with the Ford, regens. It regens a lot. My average distance between DPF regens was around 700 miles. On my Ram, it was probably double that. So that definitely affects the fuel mileage a lot, which is a good segue. So let's talk about MPG. So towing for this trip, again, I've got 96 miles in this tank. We got 3,188 miles in 2 weeks. The average MPG was 9.95 miles per gallon. Towing. Non-towing, I just got this truck, so I only have 1,554 miles for average of 17.86. My best tank towing was 11.24. My worst was 8.62. That 8.62 was going, leaving the Badlands, I believe heading towards Devil's Tower, and we had 20 to 30 mile an hour winds. So we were creeping along, fighting headwinds and crosswinds the entire way. But even with that, it still felt very stable with the Anderson hitch, never felt out of control. And I figure if it can manage in those environments, you're probably good to go. Non-towing best was 19.3, worst was 16.38 MPGs. So not terrible fuel mileage. The Ram was a little bit better. It averaged about 11 for the life for the towing. That was over about 5,000 or 6,000 miles. However, that towing was not nearly as challenging as the towing that we put this truck through. So I did record some live video while we were driving to talk about the different temps and pressures you might expect from a Ford. So I'm going to put those in here. The first one is climbing a mountain, going from about 5,000 to 8,000 feet. And the second one is just normal flatland towing. I think it's around 1,000 feet elevation. Look at towing temps. There we go. So just climbed up from 5,000 feet to 8,300 feet. The different EGTs here. High of 1,036, 969, 916, and 935. Coolant got up to 224. You can really hear the fans kicking on, cooling that down. Oil got up to 244. Got up to a total of 24 pounds of boost. It was typically about 18 pounds as we were driving. And transmission got up to about 226 degrees. No warning lights came on. Everything worked just as it should. Towing the camper, so about 17,000 pounds up in the mountains and stuck in traffic. But just wanted to go over what those temps are. This truck definitely runs warmer than the Ram, but everything seems to be good. All right, we looked at the extremes of temperatures and pressures, so we're going to look at normal temperatures and pressures. So just cruising at 65 now. Boost is anywhere from 8 to 12. We'll go up to 20 going up the hill. Oil temps a little over 200. Coolants in the 190s. EGT stay 700s. Every now and then 800s. Usually don't see 900s unless we're going up for going down 90, 94. Made it out of the mountains. Just cruising. Other setup item, I've got a Rove 4K, or a Rove R2 4K dash cam. I think those are essential, especially if you're towing. You never know what people are going to do or how they're going to behave, so very, very important to have. And I had some fun footage from Yellowstone that I'll put in here as well. Another thing that I would highly recommend is a good set of walkie-talkies. My brother came with us for our trip, and he was in a separate vehicle. He has a van that he's converting into #van life. And so it's very nice to have these and just be able to talk back and forth between the vehicles. You know, if there's any fuel issues, if we needed to stop anywhere, figuring out food, all that stuff. Plus, when we're backing up the trailer, my wife gets out and she usually calls me, and just have it on the hands-free in the truck. However, there's not cell service everywhere, so having these came in very handy. She was able to help me and guide me with these when the cell phones, we didn't have service there. Did have a slight issue with the truck. We're going, check engine light came on. It's a P2074, which is a mass airflow sensor. It didn't affect performance, didn't affect anything with the truck. But that's the only issue I really had going. The truck started with about 106,000 miles and ended with around 111,000 total. Actually 107 and 111,000 I think is actually where we were at. So I'm going to drop it off at the dealership and have them take a look at it, because I got an extended warranty with it. And yeah, no other issues. All right, so final thoughts. Very happy towing experience overall. This is a Platinum, so it has adaptive cruise and massaging seats, which are huge and made the driving experience over 3,000 miles much more pleasant. The exhaust brake worked great for this weight. Going down the mountains, I was able to set it at about 45, and once it was set, didn't touch the brakes again. You actually had to use the accelerator a couple times to speed it up a little bit, because it was slowing it down too much. I know a lot of people harp on the exhaust brakes on the Fords. It's not as good as the Ram, point blank, but it was sufficient for this. The area I noticed most of the difference was like coming off of the highway on the off ramps with the Ram. Didn't even have to touch the brakes until the last little bit. With the Ford, have to use the brakes a bit more, as the exhaust brake doesn't slow it down quite as much in that situation. However, for the mountains and the parts where you really need it for holding it steady, worked wonderfully. So yeah, pretty happy with the setup. Had a wonderful trip, went out to start in Indiana, ended up in Yellowstone, and then came back. Saw a lot of sights along the way. So if you have a heavier or longer travel trailer, I would definitely recommend a 3/4 to 1 ton. Never felt like I was lacking in truck, never felt out of control, always was able to manage the load and the weight. Kids were comfortable, wife was comfortable. It was overall a very good experience, and I'm very happy that I had enough truck to handle it. As if I just don't think I would have felt as comfortable, even in the 3/4 ton, because I knew I would have been over payload, and even though technically I would have been able to handle it, I wouldn't have felt good about it. So any questions or any thoughts, things to make improvements along with this truck or setup, let me know.